We are the Keyboard Samurai, a podcast focused on sharing insights to help those working in cybersecurity companies, be them technology or services. Each session, your host, Will Klusovsky, aka Will Clue, sits down with professionals in our industry to illuminate topics that will help your security biz, team, or self be better. Let's hack into it now. Hey, everybody, welcome back. Today, we are joined by Craig. Craig, how you doing? Don't you just give us the 30 seconds on who you are, why we care, and what we can learn from you?
Sure. 30 years ago, I got a degree in psychology and went straight out of college into cybersecurity, working for a firewall vendor in the early days of the internet, before there was even a World Wide Web, Will. And we were convincing companies that were plugging into the internet to put a firewall in place because it wasn't all, rainbows and happiness. There were bad people out there. And, it was the same conversation we had 10 years prior about putting antivirus on your workstation once it was on a network, right? And not putting floppy disks into the disk drives. So fast forward 30 years later, and I've had my CISSP for 24 years. I got it in 2001. It's 24,399, I think, is the certificate.
Wow, you're older than me. I'm the early 100,000s.
Yeah, well,
108 something or other.
That's impressive. All the same. I mean, back then I was 100% certain I failed that test. It was so difficult, but 4.5 hours wasted. But then I ended up passing it, so that was amazing. And I've been doing cybersecurity ever since. 10 years ago, I founded my own company after working for Fortune 5,000 companies like JP Morgan Chase, Vistaprint, Computer Sciences Corporation, to bring cyber literacy to the masses, but using some of my psychological background around operant conditioning, positive reinforcement over punishment theory to change behaviors, to educate people in ways that stick, right? That they actually internalize and live after the training ends.
Right. No, I love that. And that's why I'm excited to have the conversation, because I like to nerd out around psychology. I wouldn't say that I know anything. I didn't study it or anything like that, but I have some friends who do it. And working on the sort of sales and marketing side of the house, it always plays an important part. So I'm interested to see. Well, let's just start there, because we're going to talk about phishing programs.
Sure.
So where does the psychology come in? What is it that companies should be doing, right, to do it properly that maybe they're not doing? Like I know you mentioned the sort of positive reinforcement versus negative reinforcement thing.
Yeah, and actually those are not the exact opposite sides of the coin. You would think they were, but punishment is the opposite of positive reinforcement. Negative reinforcement still reinforces something, right? So it's not what we want to do. We want to the entire cybersecurity industry, if we go back in time, is probably 30 years, maybe 35 years old. You can go back and find probably incidents with the Morris worm in 1988. But outside of that, it hasn't really been a thing for a very long time, not like law, medicine, dentistry, any of the major professions out there. So it's immature, is my point. And sometimes it gets going in a direction which is a little bit the wrong direction. And where I see this the most today is in punishing bad behaviors to reduce them. Everyone has this noble idea that within their company, we want to stop people from clicking on links in emails because that leads to ransomware, and ransomware leads to extortion, and extortion means we don't get our bonuses and the company can have a real major problem on its hands. So the noble goal is to reduce the attacks that are successful by reducing clicks. But it's based on punishment theory, which says, let's send all these fake email messages to the inboxes of our employees to see if they'll click on them and fail the test, and then send them back to the drawing board, punish them, have a shameful meeting with their manager, a 3 strikes and you're fired rule, all these things that punish bad behaviors. And just for your podcast today, Will, I was doing some research on psychology and the actual foundational concepts of positive reinforcement as a better behavior change mechanism. So I want to quote you on something. Almost 100 years ago, probably about 90 years ago, B.F. Skinner published, he's considered the father of operant conditioning in psychology. And he said, punishment may suppress behaviors temporarily, but it does not teach alternative, more desirable behaviors. So if we're just sending these fake messages and we're punishing people with more videos that are, they're not email, they're maybe covering phishing in a video, but it's not the same as looking at an email and hovering over things and identifying problems. So it doesn't really teach the alternatives very well. And it's based on punishment, which is an external locus of control. So if you ever remove the punishment, people go back to clicking because they don't know why they shouldn't. And you look at personally, they're still clicking on their personal email links because they don't know any better behaviors. Another person who followed on B.F. Skinner's research was, here it is, Dr. Karen Pryor. She was a behavioral psychologist. A few years later, she wrote, positive reinforcement builds behavior. Punishment only tells you what not to do, not what to do instead. And so to answer your question, that's a lot of a long-winded story, but to answer your question, where I think most companies in this immature field of cybersecurity get it wrong is they punish the bad behaviors to reduce clicking on phishing links without using positive reinforcement, rewards, gamification, a variety of other positive methods to teach the skills that you should do instead of clicking, right? Instead of clicking, you need to go and look at the sender domain to see if it's a typo squatted domain, meaning there's just one letter missing or changed or a period in the wrong spot. Did you know my company's domain it's cyberhoot.com, and there are domains registered cyberh.oot.com. That's registered with an MX record. So someone out there owns the domain OOT and they put cyber H in front of it. So they could phish me or my employees pretending to be Cyberhoot. And if you didn't know there was a period in the wrong spot or what that meant, you could click on something you shouldn't and cause a problem. That's the level of sophistication of hackers today, on top of the AI writing a perfect grammatical and attractive phishing email that you really want to click on. It uses urgency and emotionality to get you to react without thinking. And so when you see a domain that's that, devious, and you got a content and sophisticated, spear phishing attack against you, you really need to arm these employees of yours with the very specific what you ought to be doing to make sure you're not clicking. Right? Not clicking is certainly a noble goal, but you need to know why and how. And if you don't teach the why and the how, people will click no matter what.
That's a lot of that resonates with me. It's funny because I think, well, at least most dog owners know that negative punishment doesn't really work, right? Because you have to train them what you want them to do and reward them for that. But yet then we go to our business side of the world, and also interesting to say, like you said, if we're punishing them during, then they're doing it, fear will only, just like the fear of being fired will only make somebody work hard enough to not get fired, right? So they will continue to deal with the fear and not do it, but when they go home, they'll relax, right? So I look at it like you have to educate people on something they don't care about learning, right?
That's the challenge, right? And that's another problem entirely within the industry that we haven't come to grips with, Will, is engagement. If people could learn how to phish and from a video, you'd still have to do a Clockwork Orange on them to sit them down, pry their eyeballs open, and make them watch the video, because so many people just press play and off they go to do something else. And they come back to answer the question, learning absolutely nothing. So it doesn't really work if there isn't engagement. A friend of mine, Brooks Kempler, May, I believe is her name. She does escape rooms, cyber security escape rooms in England, and they've recently introduced.
Oh yes, talking about Amy.
Yeah, Annie, and that creates engagement, right? You can't get out of this situation unless you work your way through the problems and you're learning these skills kind of without knowing. It's how I do most of my exercises, done exercising without knowing about it. Like I play hockey and I skate around and I have a great time with my friends. But at the outcome of it is that I actually have physical exercise and cardiovascular exercise. But it doesn't feel like that because it's so much focused on the fun things of hockey. Well, we need to turn cyber literacy training into fun things that are engaging to that point. Now, you mentioned the dog. I want to come back to the dog article. Everyone listening to this will probably recognize that you can try to train a dog with a shock collar or with treats, physical food treats. And we all know the dog won't learn very much with that shock collar on. They might not go near the edge of the property if the collar's on. If they forget the collar, boom, off they go, right? Or even if they have the collar on and there's a squirrel or a skunk or a rabbit across the street, they're going to just ignore that and go right through the fence, right? Employees are no different. They won't, because they don't know why, and they haven't learned the positive reasons for not clicking on things they shouldn't and how to spot them. They're likely to do the same thing. And so when you get into a positive reinforcement, you're actually creating these engaging experiences. Like my company's done that today with our Hootfish, but it allows you to walk through an email and reward the employee by passing a test, giving them a certificate, these different items that are all gamified. They get an avatar, for example. If you can create an avatar and have competitions for whose avatar becomes the most mature from a cyber literacy perspective, you're creating engagement to that point. When I take my dog to the dog park, if the dog is treat oriented, I can train him like crazy with treats and he will come back all the time. Hurricane won America's Got Talent 3 years ago with his dog trainer, and he was getting treats all throughout the stage, and he was eyes on the trainer waiting for that next treat. That's an intermittent reward schedule where the dog knows they're going to get rewarded for these great behaviors. The dog's tail's wagging, so he's having a good time doing it. And we're also benefiting, the dog for exercise or humans for learning cyber literacy skills, if you can find the right motivation. Now, not every dog is treat motivated. So you got to vary the treats and the rewards for employees. Some will just want continuing education credits for completing their thing because they got 10 hours a year they got to complete. So if you can get 4 or 5 hours, that's a great thing.
I was going to say that's because to that point, I have a dog, and yes, he's very unfortunate, I guess, that he's very treat responsive. But I do have friends that like train dogs, and they're like, he's even told me, he's like, I can usually find something to motivate that dog other than treats usually, right? And so with that said, for those users, I mean, we talk about, you want max adoption, you want people to enjoy what they're doing so they actually learn it. But for those who don't care about the maybe the internal scoreboards or the avatars, like what other kind of things do you see that works well?
Well, we've studied this problem a lot, and if you can teach people that this benefits them personally in their own personal lives, the best example is we had a video in one of our videos was around identity theft, and I got so many emails thanking me because people don't realize that the whole industry is designed to keep identity theft happening, not preventing it. What I mean by that is your financial data will be stolen somewhere, and the company will be on the hook to provide you identity theft monitoring. That's like saying, well, we didn't build your house with fire suppression built into it, but we're going to build a fire station next door. So gosh darn it, if your house catches fire, they'll be right there to put it out. That's exactly what identity theft monitoring does. When in fact, all you need to do is prevent the theft to begin with by freezing your credit, not just at the top 3. There's not even top 4. There's like 8 or 10 different credit agencies. One was the NPD breach from last fall. That's the National Public Database. They've provided an aggregation of financial data to the different credit agencies, and they themselves were breached. And I went to look up my records there, and there were 10 entries for every house I'd ever lived in, and that my social security and full name and address and all these other things were part of that. Yours could be there too. If you Google NPD breach database check, you can probably check for your own data. But most of the credit agencies out there can't monetize yours and my credit scores, selling it to third parties if it's frozen, because they can't give you a score. And that's the real answer, is like, stop the house from catching fire. Don't worry about there being a fire station across the street by freezing your identity. So we do these trainings, and we then tell people, this is not just for your work persona. This isn't just to protect your work email. All the skills you're learning around type of squatted domain names, phishing, password hygiene, and adoption of a password manager, those apply to you personally. And the more you can convince your workforce and create a culture that personally we're protecting you personally, the higher the adoption. The easier and the less friction you introduce to these things. Like I do know early on, we looked at how long should our videos be? And some of our competitors had 30 and 40-minute punishment videos for when you failed a phishing test. And I was like, oh my God.
I'm going to say 2 to 5 minutes.
Exactly right. The human attention span, this has been scientifically studied, and I don't think in psychology, maybe it was, but it used to be 18 seconds, 22 seconds was the attention span of a person. They could read a paragraph and they would get from start to finish if it was under 18 seconds of reading. Nowadays, with the serotonin inhibitors, these things, it's down to about 7 seconds because people's attention spans are what's the next dopamine hit and moving on. Like my son can't listen to a whole song now on Spotify. He's like, gets 3/4 of the way through and I'm like, oh, I like this beat. Or sometimes I don't, but he's like, next song. I'm like, wait a minute, I was just getting into that. They can't stay on one thing. So you have to keep the videos short, and that's a point of friction in some tools. Another friction is having them authenticate to get to their training. We at our company, we send a link so that you just get a link that says, hey, it's first of the month. You have 2 weeks to do it. Click here to watch your video or take your phishing simulation, and boom, you're doing it, and boom, you're done. But there's also a carrot and stick in our scenario, right? We also will remind you in a week, and we'll remind you, but CC your manager at day 14 when it's due. And that manager CC is like, it is a known stick down the road that's going to come, and you don't want to bother your manager with something that could take 3 to 4 minutes to finish and complete. Or our phishing simulation, if you know exactly what the rubric is of how to spot and avoid, if you learn how to fish with our phishing simulator, you can do it in 10 seconds.
Yeah, I was going to say, I get lots of,
done.
As a security guy who gets those things, it's like, I'll just go right to the test, right? Every time. My annual training, all of that stuff. It's like, yes, I understand data protection is important. I built the data protection program here.
Exactly. And so that's a good example of removing friction, right? There are other tools that won't allow you to get to the quiz until the video plays. Sure. Why do that if you pass the test when you take the quiz? We're measuring the outcome. Do you know the material? So at our at Cyberhoot, we allow someone to go right to the quiz if they're like you and they know the answers. Now, if they fail, guess what happens? They get to retake it immediately, but they get fewer points. Their avatar doesn't climb the ladder of avatars as fast, and then you might get upset because your colleague over here on your cyber team goes a little faster than you. And that's the incentives to do well, to pay attention, and to engage, right? To get good answers.
I think the idea of this helps you personally. People underestimate that, like how big that impact is, because when I've done end user training courses for businesses, I'll go out and do the presentation for 30 minutes, an hour, whatever, and there's always questions from them that are about their personal lives. When I'm using Facebook, I'm doing this. When I'm traveling, I'm doing this, and it's super interesting because guys like you and me who've been doing this a really long time just kind of assume everybody knows this stuff. And every time I talk to my friend who's like a psychologist and doesn't deal with IT stuff all day, and we go on a rant and I tell him how screwed everything is and how jaded I am, he's completely in shock and he just thinks it's the most interesting thing in the world. So I think being able to, one, realize that the people you're talking to, like, this is new to them and it could actually be interesting, even though it may not be to us anymore.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Cybersecurity is the one thing in all of the world. I could argue that maybe magnetic resonance imaging, MRIs, and nuclear physics are in the same boat. Like, we just don't know what we don't know about it. I got an MRI on my knee because I have a meniscus tear, going for surgery very soon, and the MRI just ran around me for a little while, and now they know what's wrong with this, cartilage inside my knee. I'm like, how does that happen, right? What's the X-rays and then the gamma ray, whatever rays they're using? Like, I don't know what I don't know there, but I know that they get a good answer. With cybersecurity, there's an old metaphor slash, I don't know if it's a Grimm's tale or whatnot, but about an emperor with no clothes on, parading around the city naked, and no one would say anything because they're all afraid of offending this emperor. but he's naked and exposing himself. That's how we operate online today, most of us, not you and I, but most people are like, I can do what I want online. I know what I need to know. No, you don't. You're actually very naked out there. And unless you learn these skills that we teach in cyber literacy land around phishing and password hygiene and multi-factor, and why passkeys are much better than even MFA on a password account, you're going to be potentially at risk by not knowing what you're up against. So that's why we teach cyber literacy. We focus on individuals. We give it away free for individuals at cyberhoot.com/individuals. Why we try to teach these cyber literacy skills in businesses. And then we harp on, hey, this protects you personally as well. So don't be grumpy about having to do 5 minutes a month. You're going to benefit tremendously.
Yeah, be glad you don't have to do 4 hours alone at the end of the year.
Yeah.
Well, Craig, this is awesome, man. I could go down the rabbit hole with you forever, but I think we're about at time. So where can everybody find you on the internet if they want to?
Cyberhoot.com is our best place. If you have a quick inquiry, you could email sales@cyberhoot.com, and we would be happy to give you a free trial or, answer any of your questions about how we've really focused on positive reinforcement, gamification to reward the good behaviors that are so critical to a lasting internalized change within your employees, as opposed to external punishment to keep people in line.
Outstanding. All right, Craig, thanks so much for your time, man.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks for enjoying Keyboard Samurai Podcast. If you'd like to engage, find Will on LinkedIn at /WillClue or visit at willclue.me. That's WILKLU.me for more info. Disconnecting now. Synac you later.